Israeli leaders are praising the courage, the quick response, and the vigilance of soldiers who thwarted a major terrorist attack coming out of the Sinai desert. By land and air, the soldiers chased down a group of Islamic militants who had brazenly breached the border in a stolen armored vehicle. Now, explosive belts were found on some of the bodies of the militants, leading officials here to believe they were intent on carrying out a string of suicide bombings. This official Israeli army video shows that a strike from the Air Force finally stopped the terrorists as they sped down a highway. A couple of the militants who survived the hit were killed by ground soldiers. Israel was the second act in this terrorist plot. The first target was an Egyptian border station in Sinai. Officials in Cairo say that more than 30 Islamic militants opened fire on Egyptian troops as they broke the Ramadan fast, killing at least 16. Spilling Israeli blood was the terrorists' next goal. But a general intelligence warning had put Israeli soldiers on high alert, and they were prepared and in place to deal with the infiltrators. Visiting the scene, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the attack showed Israel can only rely on itself when it comes to its security. Calls from Jerusalem to root out Islamic extremists in the Sinai and tighten security have largely fallen on deaf ears in Cairo. Defense Minister Abu Barak said he hoped the attack would serve as a wake-up call for Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi to finally do more.
It's quite probable that Egypt would ask Israel to modify the military annex of the peace treaty, which determines the limitations on deployment of Egyptian troops in Sinai. It is not a violation of the peace treaty because there is a mechanism within the agreement that enables modifications if the two parties agree on this modification. So it is quite legitimate for the Egyptian to ask Israel to have a dialogue on this subject.
The brazen and deadly assault on Egyptian policemen and soldiers is the first blow to the authority of Morsi. A former longtime Muslim Brotherhood member, Morsi now has to deal with the challenge of Islamic fundamentalists that see him as too moderate. Morsi is promising to find the culprits behind the attack. No terrorist group has taken responsibility. Hamas has denied any involvement and issued condemnations. A clear show of hypocrisy some in Israel have been quick to point out. Israeli authorities believe the attack is likely the work of global jihadi groups who have made post-revolutionary Sinai their new base camp.
Sinai started to become a lawless region. And the changes and the revolution in Egypt only accelerated this process of change. It created a vacuum, and very negative forces are drawn into this kind of vacuum. Some of them are extreme Salafist jihadist groups, and some of them are groups that are affiliated with the Palestinian organizations in the Gaza Strip.
Israeli officials say it's too early to know if Palestinian terrorist groups were involved in the cross-border attack. Israel will not rely on Egypt to prevent future terrorist attacks, defense officials say. Instead, Israel will improve its intelligence on Sinai to get a better handle of exactly who is operating there. The border fence along the Israeli Sinai desert will be completed in about 2 months. It will provide more protection in the future, but it won't remove the threat.
Because the fence is only an obstacle and an early warning mechanism. It is useless without forces that are deployed along the forces and can act upon attempts to breach the fence, because every obstacle can be breached. And one can assume that this kind of terrorist attempts will continue even after the fence will be completed.
The bold and daring attack has raised the bar and forced Israeli officials to think about what might come next. That's raised new fears that terrorists out of Sinai may target Israeli airliners or ships in the Red Sea the next time around. Jordana Miller, JN1, Jerusalem.